Hi, today I'd like to talk about 3 dangerous things that can hurt tiny rabbit breeds. It's been kind of hectic around here getting this room repaired, and I haven't put a video on for a while, but today I'm going to put one on about tiny breeds of rabbits. Okay, a rather bigger bunny. Here's Hubert, and he is a New Zealand bunny, or he might be a mix, but he does have the pink eyes and he's all white. And he weighs in at between 8 and 9 pounds. Okay, this type of rabbit, that's a larger size rabbit, and at the humane societies they would consider him a large size rabbit, even though there are a lot larger rabbits when you go up to the Flemish giants, which can get up to 20 pounds and would be twice this size. They would consider Hubert here a large size rabbit. And the reason for that is that most of the rabbits from the shelters originally came from pet stores, and the pet stores sell the smaller breeds of rabbits. You're going to find the Dutch rabbits, the lion heads, and people buy them, usually impulse buy, or they don't realize how bad rabbits can smell when they're not neutered or spayed, because the urine smells very strong. And they don't want to pay to get the bunny spayed, so they end up dumping the bunny. Now, that's the really good reason to adopt your bunny at a shelter that spays and neuters the rabbits before they're put up for adoption. And don't buy at pet stores. I keep saying it, but if people didn't buy animals at pet stores wouldn't sell animals. And if they didn't sell animals, that's going to close down all these terrible basically a pet factory, right? The manufacturing of pets, these giant farms where they raise the animals, and they have the mothers and fathers in cages, and they live in a cage their whole life until they're no good for breeding anymore, and then who knows what happens to them then. So every time someone buys an animal at a pet store, you're funding that cycle of misery. Okay, let me go get our small bun, Eddie Mars, and show you the difference, and then I'll try to put them next to each other. Okay, I didn't know if I could do this without an assistant, but here they are. Here's Eddie Mars, and they've never met each other before. They're 2 males. Now, Eddie Mars was a stray bunny, and Hubert was also a stray bunny. And if you saw my other videos, you know their stories. A lady called me because there was a little bunny running around her neighborhood, and it was late winter, just after Easter. I say late winter, early spring, I can't remember exactly. There was still little patches of snow on the ground. And that was Eddie Mars. So we had to catch him before a hawk got him. This was in the city, by the way, and it was near a very, very busy city road as well. Hubert was dumped along with 6 other rabbits in a park in Janesville, Wisconsin, and a man walking his dog found them hopping around behind the dumpster. Somebody had just brought them all there and dumped them out in the winter time. So his name was originally Doc. They named these 7 rabbits after the 7 dwarfs, but I changed it to Hubert. So let's take a look from the top here and see the size of these guys. Here's the size difference between these 2 bunnies. Okay, here they got their heinies, and you can see how much bigger. Line up, my dears. You can see how much bigger Hubert is compared to little Eddie Mars here. Okay, some things about small rabbit breeds and large rabbit breeds are the same. their backs are just as delicate as large rabbit breeds. So any rabbit has a delicate back, has delicate bones, can twist or bend their back and become paralyzed just as easily. It's not that the bigger breeds are tougher. Okay, so all the rabbits have to be handled in the correct way, and it's important that if you have children in your house that you don't let them handle the rabbit, because many rabbits come into vets with broken backs or injured spinal cords. Okay, rabbits are not good pets for children. They just are not. You have to know how to handle a rabbit. They're not like a cat. You know, a cat can twist and jump and not get hurt. Rabbits twist their back and they can get very hurt. The first thing Eddie Mars says to you is do not feed small breeds a lot of greens at one time, you know, each day. Do not feed them a lot of greens. A helping of greens for a bunny like Eddie Mars would be 2 large dandelion leaves, or maybe 3 or 4 smaller dandelion leaves. A helping of romaine lettuce for Eddie Mars would be a piece that's maybe about 5 inches by 5 inches. And I don't even give him, I just give him the top half of the leaf that's greener. I don't even give him the end of the leaf that's more of a whitish leaf part without a lot of vitamins in it. And I'm talking about romaine lettuce. For spring greens, a little handful of spring greens, not big, not a lot. Because if you give them a lot of greens, these small rabbits get upset stomachs very easily. It's too much greens. And this is a mistake a lot of people make, and they will give the same amount of greens to a small rabbit as to a larger rabbit. Now, if the small rabbit gets an upset stomach, he stops eating, he gets GI stasis, and he can surely die within 48 hours, 2 days, if his system doesn't start moving. And that's why it's important to have some meloxicam. You can't get it in the store, you have to get it from the vet. But if you have a vet, see if they can give you a small bottle of meloxicam. You keep it in the refrigerator. It doesn't need to be refrigerated, but it keeps fresher in the refrigerator. And that's just in case of an emergency where your rabbit would stop eating. That's a painkiller, and it's also an anti-inflammatory. Eddie Mars has gotten that from eating too many greens at one time. When I first got him, I was giving him more than he should have gotten, and he did get an upset stomach 2 times, and then I realized that he can't take the amount of greens I was giving him. He can't take the same amount as Aggie was getting, or even Miss Lydia, who's also a tiny mixed breed, but she's bigger than Eddie Mars, and she can take a little bit more, and Eddie Mars can't. Okay, so that's the first thing. Go easy on the greens. Okay, let's compare dandelions. Okay, here on the right, this is enough dandelions, and these are not really big leaves. About 4 of them, depending on their size. 4 of these smaller leaves, that's enough for Eddie Mars. Now, it's not to say that you can't give them twice a day, maybe in the morning and then again in the afternoon or evening, give him 4 leaves, but don't give him more than that at one time. Versus a nice big pile of leaves here for one of our other New Zealand whites. Eddie Mars, remember, is between 4 and 5 pounds, and our other bunnies are between 8 and 9 pounds, and even up to 10 pounds. So look at the difference. If I gave this much to Eddie Mars, he would get an upset stomach. Okay? So once again, if you have children, you got to make sure they know this, so that all these they're not feeding them greens and greens and greens, or you're going to have a very sick little rabbit on your hands. Okay, let's take a look at another helping for a small rabbit. Okay, spring mixes are good for rabbits, but you want to take out the red cabbage. Now, the large rabbits, if they get a little bit of red cabbage, it's okay. It's not good. No amount is really good for guinea pigs or small rabbits, because cabbage will cause gas, and gases can put the rabbit in pain, and they stop eating. So what I like to do is I pick out just the leafy greens. The helpings again. Here's Eddie Mars. Maybe just a tiny handful like that in your hand. That's enough for Eddie Mars for one helping of greens. And like I said, you can do this twice a day if you want, and spread it out at different times. Give them a helping like this at one time, and then give them it later on in the day, so it's not all in his stomach at the same time. But this would be a helping for one of our bigger bunnies. So take a look at the difference compared to that. Okay, that's a lettuce mix. And the same thing with leaf lettuce, like romaine lettuce. I would give him a piece of romaine lettuce that's about maybe almost as big as your hand, while a larger rabbit could take a really large piece of romaine lettuce. I don't have any romaine here in the house right now to show you, but you get the idea. Okay, some things to pick out of a lettuce mix. And this is just for the tiny breeds again, because it can cause gas, or it has a lot of calcium. Oxalic acid can also cause the sludge and the stones. So even though the big rabbits can get a little bit of this, if it's mixed in, you know, I mean, there's not that much. You have to look at your mix to see how much of this stuff is in there. Red cabbage, pull it all. For the little guys, the big guys, they can get a few pieces. It won't bother them. This is not spinach. Sometimes they have spinach in these mixes, and spinach, I pull that. For the little guys, no spinach. Big guys, again, a few pieces won't hurt them. Same thing as spinach, it has a lot of oxalic acid in it. So pull this for the little guys. If you see this, it has a red vein usually. Okay, bananas. Our bunnies, they all just love bananas. And a tiny piece of banana is okay, even to give it every day, but a tiny little piece. So let me cut this up and show you the size portions for big rabbits versus the tiny breeds. Okay, banana. Once a day, a piece like this is maybe 3/4 of an inch thick, and that's enough for one larger rabbit per day. You don't want to give them too much banana either. It's a good source of potassium though for your rabbit. Eddie Mars, I cut it in half because this, he hasn't had any problem eating banana, but I'd rather just go smaller. You know, he's half the size of the other rabbits, and this is enough for him. Which brings me to my third point with these little guys, is that these guys can get into tiny spaces where a big rabbit can't. And one time Eddie Mars was squeezing himself between the wall and the refrigerator, where the refrigerator cord is, and it was a very small space, and you wouldn't think that a bunny could squeeze in there, but Eddie Mars managed to do it. So sometimes you'll have a room that's bunny-proofed where you think that the rabbit can't get behind something to get at the cords, and maybe a larger size rabbit would not be able to, but these little guys can squeeze in. So you have to remember that too, that they're very small and they can get into tiny crevices, and they can get into trouble if they can get at a cord that's behind some piece of furniture. They can also go under low furniture and squeeze underneath. So you have to keep that in mind so that your bunny doesn't get electrocuted. A 3-inch space between the refrigerator and the wall is enough room for Eddie Mars to squeeze completely in there. And we have the big cords, of course, carrying a lot of electricity. If he nips on those cords, he's dead. So check your rooms and make sure that everything's blocked off. When he comes out, I have to block the bottom of this refrigerator area with something so he can't squeeze in there. You wouldn't think he could get through a 3-inch space, but he can. Okay, those are just 3 things to think about if you've got a tiny rabbit. Right, Eddie? Remember, there's a lot of little tiny rabbit breeds at the shelters because those are the ones that get turned over. They were pet store rabbits, and hopefully you can find a shelter too that is already spayed and neutered them. And here's one more thing to think about. Ask the shelter where you get your rabbit from if they are used to eating greens. Hopefully the shelters are giving them some greens every day, but some might not. If you're taking in a rabbit that someone else is giving away, make sure that you find out, have these people been feeding them greens? Some people don't even feed their rabbits greens. You know, they don't take good care of their rabbits. So if your rabbit has not been eating greens, then start out really slowly with the greens and build up to the correct amount, but don't just throw in a big handful of greens when you get them home. Their stomachs aren't used to it. You say, well, a rabbit should be used to that, but their stomachs are not used to it if they haven't been eating greens every day. Okay, here's Norman Zuzu enjoying some dandelions. Okay, now it's hard to hold these 2 bunnies, but maybe you can see the size difference. Don't you fight. You can see the size. Oh, for Pete's sake. Here, let's try Hubert. Oh, and he'd like to fight with him, hey? No fighting. I'm watching you 2 stinkies. They've never met each other. They say, what the heck is this? You behave. There goes Hubert, okay. And here's Eddie Mars. He said the room's a mess. Hey, stay away from that fan. Hey, look at that. What are you doing there? Get out of there. You stay away from that wire. I don't need to replace a wire on the fan. He's like, what is happening in this room? Right, Steven?